Matheson. I do rather think it's starting to freeze out there. Could you see to it that the steps are gritted before our guests return home? Thank you, Matheson. That will be all. Now, good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the third-party engineering and acquisition of British Armour Group. I trust that your Christmases were more peaceful than last year. Ha! Still, though the war has departed our shores for now, our hearts must remain with our boys and allies in North Africa and elsewhere abroad. Anyhow, I think, despite the snow, that everyone is now present, and so we may begin. But before I start my presentation, can I interest anyone in another glass of port, perhaps? No? Or a whiskey? The Macallan is particularly good, I think. Well, suit yourselves. If you're all comfortable and suitably lubricated, then we can get started. As ever, ladies and gentlemen, you have been summoned here because the War Office has determined that your companies are those capable not only of building, but also designing from scratch the superior armour fighting vehicles Britain is going to need to win this war. Naturally, our business here is on a need-to-know only basis, and I must remind you before we proceed that you are each of you bound by the Official Secrets Act. Firstly, let me begin by apologising for having to summon you here on Boxing Day of all days. Truth be told, I'd have gathered you yesterday if I believed for a moment that you might all come. Time is pressing, you see, not, for once, from the enemy, but rather from the War Office itself. A contract for nearly 2,500 tanks hangs in the balance, my friends, yet it is one that they seem inclined to do away with altogether. So, if you wish to lay claim to it, you will need to work fast. And so I have called you here without delay, such as that you might have as much time as humanly possible to do your good work. Some amongst you, perhaps, may be aware of the A25 specification for a light tank Mark 8. The Harry Hopkins, after the US President's Chief Diplomatic Advisor, as it has come to be known, is a design which was submitted in September to the War Office by Vickers Armstrong as a replacement for the Mark 7, the so-called Tetrarch, which, for various reasons, simply hasn't caught on, not least because it has struggled to find its doctrinal niche. Despite the fact that barely 100 Tetrarchs have been delivered and only 220 of them ordered, and then only that many because the armour plate for them was already purchased prematurely. Despite the questionable relevance of light tanks in our present tank doctrine, the Tank Board of the War Office, in their impenetrable wisdom, saw fit to order 1,000 of the A25 on the spot. What is more, that order was increased to 2,410 just last month. As balmy as that may seem, insult is added to injury when we learn that the so-called Harry Hopkins is already facing severe developmental delays, particularly regarding its front suspension. Furthermore, revisions to her design have already caused it to become overweight, making it no longer compatible with the General Aircraft Hamilcar glider, thereby ruling out the airborne deployment option which its predecessor enjoyed. To make matters worse, this proposed design fails to offer improved armament over the Tetrarch and has notably worse mobility, which has been sacrificed on the altar of improved armour protection, though not such as would deter any serious enemy anti-tank weaponry. In short, ladies and gentlemen, the A25 is doomed to be a failure, and any fool can see it. So I have spent my festive period lobbying the Tank Board to give you all the chance to make them a better offer. So successful has the T.E.A.B.A.G initiative been thus far that we gave them no option to refuse. At the forefront of my argument was the insistence that if 2,400 plus light tanks are to be produced, they should at the very least provide a clear advantage over their predecessors, as the Harry Hopkins fails so to do. The good news, therefore, is that the Ordnance quick-firing 6-pounder gun is finally in production, and it will provide a potent tank gun in a form factor still sufficiently compact so as to be mounted on a light tank. Certainly, it will far outclass the 2-pounder mounted on the Tetrarch by a considerable margin in almost every conceivable regard. That said, such a gun will inevitably require that space for a loader be made in any tank mounting it, which will be a significant break from form as far as our light tanks go, which have long been crewed by just 3 men. Your designs, however, must accommodate 4. In addition, it has been agreed upon that any tank you design must be frontally proof against the ubiquitous German 37mm anti-tank gun at the very least. This will provide at least a useful increase in protection over the previous marks of light tank. The Meadows MAT engine, as used in the Tetrarch, is a complex little machine for its size and power, and it failed to allow the A25 to exceed 30 miles per hour, making it no faster than a proper cruiser tank. It goes without saying, therefore, that we must do better. To that end, I have secured supply for this project of the de Havilland Gypsy Queen, the military variant of the Gypsy 6. With a few modifications, it should provide the necessary increase in power over the MAT to keep speeds above 30 miles per hour, whilst also being a simpler and more easily maintained power plant. Beyond these improvements, it seems to me that any successor to the Tetrarch ought to be able to at least match its strategic usefulness. Therefore, I would advise you to strongly consider keeping your designs within the requirements to fit the Hamilcar glider, though regrettably I was unable to persuade the War Office to insist upon this capability. Such as it is then, here is the new specification which the War Office has put forward. All of the parameters are entirely your choice if they are not listed in the specification. Vehicles that do not meet the fixed criteria in any of the categories will be disqualified, however, so please do read the specification and the small print very carefully before you set to work. Your deadline, ladies and gentlemen, is a fortnight hence, the 9th of January, by which time, if no suitable light tank proposals are received, the 2,410 tank contract offer will be withdrawn. I trust that, as ever, you will all rise to the task admirably. But now, I really must let you all be on your way before the weather takes a further turn for the worse. So I will say simply, good evening, good luck, and Godspeed, my friends. And I wish us all a happier new year when it comes.
Hey Sprocketeers, T.E.A.B.A.G is back. And whether you're an old hand or a first timer, and whether you're coming at this from the official subreddit or the official Discord, you will all need to be aware of the revised way in which submissions are to be made. Firstly, your deadline, as stated by Sir Charles, is the 9th of January, specifically 23:59 UTC+0 on the 9th. By request, an extension of 24 hours can be granted to those of you who have started and need time to finish an entry. Don't hesitate to ask. I'd hate to see your hard work go to waste. In extenuating circumstances only, a further 24 hours may be granted. Secondly, you are no longer asked to write a sales pitch in full in the first instance when submitting. Instead, you will submit via email to teabagcompetition@gmail.com your design's blueprints, see the video description for instructions on how to find these, and 4 clear screenshots of your vehicle, front, side, rear and top, as attachments. In the body of the email, you should include a 100-word elevator pitch, which should focus on what is unique and interesting about your entry. What are its key selling points? For the sake of the community, we ask that you post the same photos, and any further more visually interesting ones you care to add, and the elevator pitch, to either the official subreddit, under the competition flair with T.E.A.B.A.G 10 in the title, or that you post the same in the submissions channel of the official Discord. Then finally, you should include a link to said post in your submission email, please. Thirdly, we need to talk about preparing your blueprints and smoothing. First, smoothing. Due to its exploitability and the fact that it cannot be adequately deciphered by our blueprint scanner, we request that all entries that use smoothing angle have it set to 0 at the point of submission. Please then also include a note in your tank's in-game description box of what the smoothing angle should be for aesthetics purposes, and we will then restore it before judging aesthetics. This means that smoothing in T.E.A.B.A.G is only for aesthetics. You should be sure to properly sculpt your tank's model so that its armor profile qualifies even when the smoothing angle is turned off. Furthermore, while we have no problem with you submitting designs made in generated mode, we request that all designs be submitted in Freeform mode. Don't panic if you don't know how to use Freeform. Just finish your tank in generated mode, then hit the Freeform button. Let the game make the change, and then hit save and send us that sweet Freeform blueprint. Please and thank you. Fourth, we have a blueprint scanner and the power of spreadsheets. Please do not use exploits or file editing to cheat. Such attempts will almost certainly be flagged up and disqualified. Aesthetic-only exploits are still permissible, however. Please note that while it used to be acceptable to have the aesthetic applique Armour cheat on, this will no longer be permissible, and it will be set to off when we test your designs. Fifth, after the 2-week submission window closes, if more than 20 entries have been received, we will use your entry stats, your elevator pitches, and the photos you sent us to weed out any disqualified entries and to narrow down the field to the top 20. These 20 will then proceed to the full final judging phase. You will be kept abreast of the results of this process as it happens. If you don't make it into the final stage, don't worry. You'll still be able to request feedback on how you can get there next time. If you are selected for the final 20, you will at that point be required to submit a full sales pitch, which should aim to sell your tank to the War Office. These will be judged based on how in keeping with the period they are, on their presentation and graphics, on how detailed they are, and on how well they actually sell your vehicle to us. The sales pitches should now be limited to 1,000 words, though you may add additional narrative for flavour to either end of the 1,000 word pitch, providing it is clearly marked as such. Submitting pitches via Reddit is straightforward, and most of you will be familiar with how to do this. As for how this will work on Discord, I'm afraid that is yet to be finalised, but you will receive details in good time on how to do it, should you make it into the final 20. Please note, while you will be given additional time to write up the full pitch, it is highly recommended that you at least plan it out in advance so that if you get through to the final 20, you will be able to submit it without unnecessary additional stress. Finally, you will find a link included in the rules and instructions to a simplified version of the Blueprint Scanner tool that Albino Creeper has been working on for us. It is strongly recommended that you use this to check the armour values on your blueprint, as measuring effective armour in-game can be tricky and is somewhat subjective. Alright, I think that's everything I needed to get covered just now. It's almost certain I forgot something super important probably, but hopefully you're more or less good to go now. Oh, and Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to all of you. So until the deadline, take care out there.